angels in white, seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot. They asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" "They've taken my Lord away," she said, "and I don't know where they've put him." At this, she turned round and saw Jesus standing there, but she didn't realize that it was Jesus. "Woman," he said, "why are you crying? Who is it that you are looking for?" Thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you've put him, and I'll get him." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned towards him and cried out in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said, "Do not hold on to me, for I've not yet returned to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them, I am returning to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went to the disciples with the news, "I have seen the Lord." And she told them that he had said these things to her. Matt. We're just going to pray for Matt as he comes to speak to us. Father, thank you for Matt. Thank you for all his preparation. Thank you that we can engage with this story in a special way today. And just really bless him and bless us as we listen, that we'd hear your voice speaking to us. Amen.
Morning. That was a smattering. Good morning. Come on, I heard 3 children. Good morning. Thank you. Well done, everybody. There we go. Morning. Morning. This is just ad-lib while I actually open my book and sort out what I'm saying. Tom, can I get that picture up on the screen, please? So a few weeks ago, and I'm going to use this because I'm going to be walking around a lot today. So a few weeks ago, hold on. A few. A few weeks ago, it's flashing red at the bottom. It's now off. Good morning. I think the battery's gone, John. It's all right. We won't need it. I'll manage. So a few weeks ago, a friend of mine received this email from Jeffrey Preston Bezos, the founder of Amazon, and the second richest man in the world. Much to his horror, he's no longer the richest man in the world. And she posted it on Facebook with sort of disbelief and skepticism. And I don't know why. I don't know whether it's because his email address is jeffreyprestonbezos@gmail.com, or whether it's because he signs it off Jeffrey Preston Bezos, billionaire. I don't know which bit of it made her skeptical. But, you know, it was too good an offer and she didn't look into it. Quite right too, I wouldn't have looked into it either. You know, we live in a very skeptical society and we don't really believe a lot of the things that come across at us, particularly from social media. But I wonder if we would treat this differently if we received this letter in the post on Amazon-headed paper, or if we got it from a law firm that we know. Thank you, John. Or if we received it from a law firm that we know on their headed paper, we might look into it. You know, is it working now, John? I'm in the mood to pace, but I won't. It's fine. We might look into it a bit more. If I was offered $2.5 million from a lawyer that I know, or from an Amazon-headed paper, I might find out what's going on. You know, it's too good an offer not to pay attention to it. And I'm going to say this morning that it's the same for the resurrection. It's the same for this story of the risen Christ. There is loads of evidence and loads of reasons as to why we should look into it a bit more. You know, we shouldn't just dismiss it out of hand. Because we're not just offering $2.5 million with the risen Christ. We're talking not just about a vague, immaterial afterlife, but about being given a new body when we die and are resurrected. When we rise with Jesus, we are given a new body in a perfect world where there is no pollution, there is no war, there is no famine. Everything is as it should have been at creation. That's the offer that Jesus gives us. Now, let's stop there. If that's on the table, I think it's worth looking into. And I love evidence. So that those of you that don't know, I'm a lawyer most of my life. Sometimes I'm chasing a child, sometimes I'm a lawyer. And I love evidence. I spend my life writing witness statements and arguing with the other people and trying to debunk the other side's witness statements and tell them why they're wrong. And when I became a Christian, I'd been a lawyer for 6 years already. And I spent quite a few years looking into the evidence because I wasn't just going to take it as this is the answer, off you go. So I only became a Christian because of the rational evidence that I found that was put before me. And I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes or so running through some headlines as to why, just from today's passage, we have rational reasons to, at the very least, look into what's on the table. Now, some of you will be sitting here going, okay, great, I've heard this 1,000 times, and some of you will be sitting there going, I've made a terrible error coming to church this morning. This is for all of you. Whether you've never looked into it before or whether you've looked into it and you know the answers, you need to hear this. Because if it's the fact that you know the story, you might need to give your friends this evidence. And if you don't know the evidence I'm about to give you, you should listen to it. Because no matter how strong your faith is, when trouble comes, if your faith is not shot through with evidence that you can sit on, it's going to be hard to cling on to it. So let's all listen up. Now, I should say, I am going to need about 30 volunteers during the course of this talk. So whether or not you've ever volunteered before, I don't really care. Get your feet warmed up. You're probably going to end up on the stage before the end of the talk. So we're going to start off. I would like 3 or 4 ladies or girls. It has to be a female. If you have 3 or 4 of you, over here. Anybody? Don't be shy. There's no requirements. There's 2 coming up. Thank you very much, Matt. Marvellous. We have 1. We have 2. We have a 3rd. We have a 4th. Fantastic. Could you just stand up on the stage? You don't have to do anything. I'm going to try this one more time, John. I'll try it one more time. Or we might have another option. Test, test, test. Is that on? Amazing. Right. So we start off with 3 or 4 women. And the reason I've started with 3 or 4 ladies over here is the passage tells us that Mary Magdalene in John's Gospel is the first person to find the empty tomb. And that matters because in the society that we're talking about, in the nicest possible way, guys, in the society we're talking about, you wouldn't even have been allowed to be a witness in a courtroom. In the year 30 AD, in the first century of where we are, women couldn't even be witnesses in a courtroom. They weren't allowed to be. Their testimony didn't count for anything. We're very different now, thank goodness. And so it just sort of makes no sense that women would be the first person to find the tomb if you're making this up. There's a philosopher called Celsus in the 2nd century who really hated Christianity. And he was sort of the first person to try and debunk Christianity. He's sort of like 2nd century Richard Dawkins, if you like. And he said in one of his letters, the idea that women would be the people to find the empty tomb just doesn't make sense. It's not believable. What a load of nonsense. And I say to him, the opposite is true. Because if you are making this up, if John's writing this gospel, or Matthew, or Mark, or Luke are writing their gospel, and they're making it up, the last people to find the tomb empty would be women. If you want it to be believable at the time, you're going to have Peter and John find the tomb because, they're men. And in the society that we're writing in, they are more believable. So this is your first reason. It would be bonkers to make it up with women finding the empty tomb. No offense, ladies. I believe everything you tell me. The only reason that they would put women as being the ones that found the tomb was because, 1, those women are still alive, and they were going to have said, well, why have you written it that way? That's not what happened. And 2, that's what happened. And we're only talking about the empty tomb. Now, I need 2 more volunteers, please. Or 1 volunteer. Come on, Evelyn. Can you hold this strip of linen that is not a pillowcase, it is a strip of linen, and this bag of herbs and spices? No expense. Thank you very much. If you could hold one of these, that would be great. And just show everybody so that we know what we're talking about. So in John's passage here, he talks about how we went into the tomb and the linen is folded carefully in the corner. The linen was left behind. In one of the other Gospels, the spices are left behind. Some theories are that a grave robber came and took Jesus' body. And I just wanted to draw attention to this very briefly, because the only three things that were in the tomb was Jesus' body, some linen, and some herbs and spices. Now, I'm not a grave robber, just to clear that one up. But if I was a grave robber, I don't think the only thing I would take from a tomb would be the decimated, decaying, 3-day-old body of a man who'd been whipped to within an inch of his life and then hung on a cross and stabbed. I don't think I'd want to carry him through the streets. The only things of value in the tomb were the linen and the herbs and spices. So a grave robber's not going to nick the body and leave the things that actually have some financial value. And they're certainly not going to nicely fold the strips of linen and leave them gently in a corner. So I just wanted to add that one in, because it's particularly in the passage today. So this is the evidence for the empty tomb. And this is to say nothing about the half-a-ton boulder that's been rolled away, or the guards that didn't see anything and haven't done anything to stop anyone. So that's the empty tomb. Let's talk about the risen Jesus. And now we are going to get a little bit carried away now with eyewitnesses. And these are eyewitnesses who haven't just seen a mirage or a ghost or a vision of Jesus. These are people who we are told physically engaged with Jesus. Thomas was shown Jesus' hands. Doubting Thomas, Jesus showed him his hands. Thomas put his fingers in the holes where the nails had gone and put his hand in the side where the wound was. This isn't just a mirage on the distant horizon while someone was dehydrated. So we're going to run through the Gospels and a little bit of Acts as to who saw the risen Christ. So Jesus rose from the dead, and we are told had 40 days on earth as he told us what on earth was going on. So can I please have another Mary Magdalene over here? Anyway, don't be shy. Honestly, there's probably 30 volunteers in this bit alone. Thank you, Sue. Up you come. I will just start picking on you. So, Mary Magdalene, in John's Gospel we've just seen, she sees the risen Jesus, Rabboni. And then in Matthew's Gospel, the other women. So can we have a few more ladies, please? Come and join Sue on this side. Becky, could you come up, please? Thank you, Charlotte. Up we go. Come on, Becky. Isaac, do you want to come with? Because, Isaac, you can be Cleopas. Because on the road to Emmaus, thank you, Liz, in Luke's Gospel, we see Cleopas and another disciple. Will, do you want to come and be the other disciple? I told you, I'll just start picking on you. So Will and Cleopas. Jesus walks on the road to Emmaus with them. He doesn't just see them. He walks with them for the rest of the day, teaches them the scriptures, talks to them, has a conversation with them, has an argument, a debate with them. Right, 11 disciples and others. So Charlotte, that's outrageous. Claire, Mike, up you come. Charlotte's already there. Ben, Liz, do you want to bring Mike? Oh, no. All right, you carry on. Apologies. Noah. Josh, up you come. Chris, up you come. Georgia, Amelia, up you come. Ryan, do you want to come up? Joseph, Imogen, are you busy? Could you able to volunteer? Do you want to come up onto the stage? Right, so that's about 11. That's about 11 disciples and others. Let's work through this side. Guys, anybody on this side, can you all come up? Davises, if you wouldn't mind starting to make your way up. We've got, because he appears in John's Gospel to the 10 apostles and also to Thomas. You can see where I'm getting at here. In John's Gospel, again, he appears to the 7 apostles later, to the disciples again in Matthew's Gospel. And then in Luke's Gospel, he appears multiple times on the Mount of Olives and again later on. Now, can I have one more volunteer, please? I need one more volunteer. Yes. And it's great that you're really tall. You need to come up into the middle, I'm afraid. Can you hold this up really high so that everyone can see it? So probably hold it quite tight. In Paul's letter to the Corinthians, 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 6, Paul tells us that at one time, Jesus appeared to more than 500 people at once. More than 500 people at once. Just to put that into some perspective, we've got about 105 people in church this morning. It feels like quite a lot of people up here. Times it by 5, including all of you still sat down there, you fortunate ones who have been allowed to stay down there. More than 500 people. And Paul says to them, most of them are still alive. Go and ask them, go and talk to them, go and challenge them, because they remember it. I don't know about you. Corinthians was written about 20 years after Jesus died. Now, I am, to the shock and awe, I'm sure, the young age of 33. I remember what I was doing when I was 13, more or less. If you came up to me and said, Matt, I heard a rumour that 20 years ago you won the under-13s County Cup with Wendover Cricket Club. Is that right? I know. Thank you. Did I get a woo? I know, it wasn't the reason. What? I was very sporty in my youth. But the point is, I can remember it. I can say, yeah, it was a great day. I actually hit a 6 and then got out the next ball, and I was furious, and I was 13, and I was full of hormones, and I threw my cricket helmet across the changing room because I was that cross at myself. 20 years is not a long time. And Paul says, go and ask them, go and challenge them. These are real people. These are real witnesses to the risen Christ, real witnesses to the empty tomb. There is no rational reason not to believe that this is what happened historically. Let's talk about what the resurrection means. If you want to lower your arms, I don't want you to pass out. But you are all staying up there. The resurrection means the sure knowledge that Jesus, our Saviour, has the love to forgive me, has the power to restore me, that no matter what I have done, no matter what is going on, there is a God who has saved me, who has died so that I can be forgiven. He is the climax of creation so that we can have our relationship with God, the Creator, restored and back to where it should be. I am saying this is something to look into. This is $2.5 million on a letter-headed paper. Something that warrants a little bit of investigating. And if you do want to investigate it, I would highly recommend this book, The Case for Christ, by Lee Strobel. He is an investigative journalist, and his wife became a Christian, and he was horrified. And he went, you know what, I'm going to go on a journey of investigation, and I'm going to tell her why she's wrong. And then he became a Christian. Because by the end of 300-odd pages, he had found enough evidence to support all of what he had been discovering. If you would like to borrow this, if you would like to have this, I'm very happy to give or lend it to you. Just come and see me afterwards. This is not just spam. This is not just junk mail. This is evidence that Jesus is alive, that Jesus is alive for you, for all of us. And I, for one, am very, very thankful for that. Can we have a huge round of applause for all of our volunteers, and clap yourselves as well. And please go and sit down.